Hello, I'm Rekha. I've become somewhat obsessed with white lacy underwear. I made an Edwardian corset cover, although I don't wear an Edwardian corset. But why not make beautiful things? I wanted to use the cabbage from my Edwardian chemise. I didn't feel like drafting it myself, so I used the Truly Victorian TVE02 pattern. I didn't want shoulder seams, so I tried to join the shoulders. However, they were sloped, but I needed them straight, and the neck and armholes needed adjustment too. This is how I drew the pattern on the fabric. There was no science involved, I simply drew the new neck and armholes in a random way and hoped for the best. It often works. This is what I ended up with. You might not see it, but I cut two of them. I joined back and side seams with a French seam. First I sewed the seams from the right side and from the wrong side. I used running stitch, the look of which I much prefer to backstitching. I happened to have quite a few strips of the same fabric that once wanted to become the flounce of a petticoat, but I simply gave up that project. Now I cut one of them into two to make ruffles. I didn't measure the length, I always go for the look and don't bother much about measuring things. Rolling the long edge of the ruffles was my favorite part. I just love rolling. In my chemise video, I told you that next time I would try rolling as I read it in contemporary sewing books. I did not. Well, I will always go the easier way. I had some beautiful lace which I washed first. Lace can shrink, so it's advisable to wash it before attaching it to the garment. After the lace dried, I simply pulled it back to shape. I sewed the lace to the rolled edge of the ruffles. Then I rolled the short ends as well. By the way, I rolled the armholes as well. After attaching the lace, I again played a bit with the placing of the ruffles. I did it on myself, and I also kept putting a blouse over it to check the effect on my shape, but you can't see me in underwear. To make the front placket, I sewed on a strip of fabric on both sides. I used a running stitch, which is strong enough. I trimmed the allowance. I turned the strip to the wrong side. I used my fingers to give the placket a sharp edge. I don't recommend doing this when a seam is cut on the bias because you'll stretch it. In that case, I will press it with an iron. I top stitch along the edge using a running stitch again. I folded the other edge. I stitched it down with a running stitch. It was more difficult than backstitching, but it is aesthetically more pleasing. I gathered the bottom edge of the front. Tiny white gathers are so satisfying. I sewed on a waistband. Here I backstitched because the gathers were thick and I wanted to make sure they were secured. I usually stitch between the two gathering lines. I folded the other edge of the waistband and whipped it. I don't really understand why other people don't baste instead of pinning. I gathered the ruffles. I decided to replace the blue thread with the white one because I wanted to leave it in the seam. I backstitched the ruffles to the neckline. I trimmed the allowance. I made a bias tape which I pasted on the neck. The gathering thread that I didn't remove made this much easier by keeping the edge of the gathers tight. I butched the bias tape from both sides. This solution seemed the easiest and most practical. I had no slotting lace, so I had to improvise. I made marks 1/2 centimeter apart along the neck. I stitched the lace to the edge from one mark to the other, then I left a gap by bringing a needle up at the next mark. It was sheer luck that I had the right number of marks. I discovered quite early in the process that I needed wider gaps, however I obstinately went on stitching. I was told not to call myself lazy, but I'm afraid there's really no other words that could explain why I didn't correct that mistake. It is not ready because I didn't have buttons, so I didn't make the buttonholes. I didn't have ribbon either. I used some yarn temporarily. I've ordered some vintage mother of pearl buttons and silk ribbons, so I will update you when I finally finish the corset cover. If you like this video, please give it a thumb up. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon if you want a notification when I upload a new video.